Frank Bonada here for LowKick MMA. Joining me today is the Cage Warriors lightweight champion, George Hardwick, who's coming off arguably the biggest fight, the biggest win of his career today, in which he defended his title against Chris Bungard at Cage Warriors 147. George, thank you for your time today. How's it going?
Everything's going well, going well. Uh, a few kilos heavier,
Hmm.
but just training loads nonetheless.
Right.
Enjoying my strand at the minute. It was perfect time in that fight to get it done just before the whole Christmas time. Like, I feel a bit for the people fighting on New Year's Eve.
I was going to ask, yeah, like not tempted at all to try get on that one last fight.
No, in terms of competitive schedule, I'm thinking about March. I'm thinking about March, April, see what's going to come up then.
I mean, there is a UFC fight in London in March. Is that the goal?
That's the goal. That would be the ideal. But it's just that stuff I've got no control over. That's what
Hmm.
my manager deals with. I'm just gonna try to be the most effective martial artist I can be, enjoying the extra calories for a bit. And Cage Warriors events pick up again in March. So if there's no UFC, call up then and just defend the belt again.
Absolutely. Um, I suppose look at both scenarios. Who's an ideal opponent if you do happen to make your UFC debut, or if you are still at Cage Warriors, who do you imagine you'll be defending your title against?
See, I'm kind of unsure with both because in the UFC, at that kind of outside level, you don't know the name. It could be a random Eastern European name
Mm.
or Chechen name that you don't know how to pronounce. That's kind of what you got to stay ready for. In terms of in the Cage Warriors division, it's hard to think who's next because if you look at topology rankings, Sadari's there, but he's coming off two losses now.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure who's next on either possibility.
I mean, I've got a name on the UFC side, someone who you looked likely to fight in Cage Warriors. He's guy who stepped up to the UFC in Paris when I believe. So you were offered a UFC like short notice fight
Yeah,
for
but
Paris, turned it down, and then it looks like was it Mike Figlak who stepped in?
yeah,
And yeah. So obviously, yeah, that name is Mike Figlak. You and him had that incredible video when you both staring each other down, and Harry and Matt in the background joking about, and you two are just like locked in. Is that a fight that interests you?
yeah. I would love to fight that. You know, it's kind of it's kind of weird. I was primed for a possible fight with him for the Cage Warriors belt. Obviously, had that stare down that lasted 10 minutes, and then he stepped up on that week's notice to fight in Paris. Well, even his fight with Sadari, he took a few big knees. You've got to be careful back to back. That's one of the reasons why I knocked it back because my hands were still busted up.
Mm.
I tried to rush back into training and it didn't help them. My nose was still a bit busted up, and it was just a really bad timing to jump in on an opportunity like that on a week's notice. Well, that would be a good fight. He likes to come forward. I do, but I do it a bit better. So
Yeah, I mean there is like I remember around when he got signed to the UFC, there was like legitimate disappointment, especially from sort of like a European fan base, that you two would never be able to throw down in Cage Warriors. So it almost seems like you finally get to do that Cage Warriors title fight in the UFC if it comes about, which would it would be brilliant from especially a UK European standpoint.
yeah, it would be a shame that it wouldn't be 5 rounds, but
It's
yeah,
true.
it'd still be great.
Um, all right, let's just knock it back for a moment. Then Chris Bungard, that performance. I mean, yeah, looked incredible. A real like a sort of highlight reel package that you can cut from that fight. Uh, First of all, yeah, have you taken proper time to sort of celebrate the win, or have you been straight back to the grindstone?
So that fight was Sunday, and I got back into the gym Wednesday. I got back into training pretty quick, and then a week and a half later, I got sick.
Hmm.
This flu that's been going around, and that KO'd me. Well, I've just been training consistently. It's kind of this out of camp phase where I'm doing loads of volume, but not killing myself each round. And sometimes if I'm going like doing sparring rounds, it's not like doing hard rounds. Might just go with the beginner just to practice one move again and again and again.
Got you.
But yeah, I can't take loads of time off. As soon as I won that fight. Normally after a fight, you can't sleep. And like I was just lying in bed in the hotel room, I couldn't sleep. So I'll bring up my phone and I start watching kickboxing fights. You know, like proper obscure Japanese ones where you've got to copy and paste, let's say, like Japanese kanji to find the right fighter I want to watch. These kind of very out of the, you know, left field fights with different Kyokushin guys who've gone into kickboxing. I was just thinking, I just fought, done loads of calf kicks and body shots and kickboxing, what have you, in that fight. Can't sleep. Okay, I'll watch some more calf kicking and body shotting and kickboxing.
Yeah.
So I can't stay away from it too long unless I'm sick or something like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel that the sort of MMA consumption, like obviously within this job, you're looking at MMA, reading about it, writing about it all day, and then if I want to go like going to sleep, want to relax, I'll put on like UFC 42 and fall asleep watching that. Um, but the actual performance against Bungard, how do you rate that? Sort of compared to your other performances?
See, in terms of going according to the plan, it went really well, but I was disappointed with it at the time. You know, I got caught with a lot of jabs that were a bit sloppy to get caught with. First time I've taken any low kicks in my career, really. He landed 2 low kicks. Normally, I've checked every low kick in every fight, and that was eating me up. I was a bit disappointed with that. My calf was a little bit sore, so I imagine his calf would have been very sore. But yeah, it was almost too according to plan. I predicted a third round finish in that one, but then obviously it was the second round finish. With that body shot, the last body shot, I wasn't even expecting that to do loads of damage. I just throw my right arm up as a feint, that Canelo feint. Right arm comes up, just tap the body shot in, and it just accumulated. So it wasn't like some massive jump for joy type moment. Like when I won the belt, that was a real jump for joy moment. Had to fight through it a bit. And even though the Bungard fight was a better performance, I took less damage, won each round. It was almost kind of like just as it's starting to get going, it's over.
Yeah, I got you. But that finishing blow, the body hook, the body shot, is sort of becoming a staple of your of your highlight reels. I'm sure, when you do make it to the UFC, that's going to be on every single highlight reel package. That body shot, and I heard Jack Slack talking about it like it's being shanking someone in the ribs almost, which I thought was a brilliant sort of descriptive of that blow. How integral is that to your arsenal? And then also, do you feel like sort of that sort of body work is underutilized in MMA in general?
Yeah, it's massively underutilized in MMA, especially if people think 4 ounce gloves I can knock someone out if I just land one hit. But also those 4 ounce gloves, the knuckles pierce through to the ribs, the liver, the solar plex, even a jab to the body. If you jolt it in, there's a lot of can like really win someone in 4 ounce gloves. And I think part of that is all I've always liked body shots. The kickboxing I watched, you see a lot of body shots. Always been a fan of like Masato, Andy Sauer, the K1 Max, where they're hitting left hook bodies. But I think another thing is when I started fighting, it was junior rules Muay Thai. In junior rules Muay Thai, there's no head contact whatsoever. You know, you can grab people's head to clinch and stuff, but there's no punches or kicks to the head. So it's so heavily body focused and leg focused that it's probably just ingrained into me. That was where I started competing and started learning martial arts in that Muay Thai junior system, the junior rules system. The body shots is always a high priority to me.
Got you. That's interesting. I didn't know you had a background in straight Muay Thai. How did your transition go from starting that sport and then moving over to MMA?
See, even when I started Muay Thai, I was like 13. The idea was always to move across to MMA. Moved across to MMA after some Muay Thai fights when I was like 15 or yeah, 15. And me and my brother have always had an aptitude for it. And we kind of had a good understanding of the positions just from the UFC game, like UFC
Yeah,
Undisputed 2009, before we moved over. But yeah, we just tend to learn quick because we were that used to the rhythm of 6 days training a week in Muay Thai that when we went to MMA, we just did the same thing and picked it up pretty quick.
got you. How do you think the old undisputed games pair up to the modern EA UFC games?
See, I haven't actually really played any of the modern EA UFC games. The one that I really liked was Fight Night because I think it's a bit
Mm,
easier to do boxing. There was remember EA MMA, which had Fedor and Randy Couture in,
I don't know if I even
and it
played that.
not probably not a lot of people did. It has Baz Rutten in it and Kevin
Right.
Randleman and all that, and it was just felt like it was made with a 50 quid budget, but a lot of love. It was a
Brilliant.
bit of a goofy game. I quite like that one.
Yeah, yeah. One of my sort of favorite quotes, I was actually trying to find it today, before this interview, but I couldn't find it anywhere. But I think it was when you were talking about sort of what you were doing to prepare when you were in lockdown, and the main thing you said you were doing was just playing Bloodbourne. Is that right?
Oh yeah. Well, actually, I think that was posted on one of my fight breakdowns. You know,
Right.
I've done these little fight breakdowns I've done. Was I had this stint in my career where just before I went pro, I dislocated my elbow, which was a pretty bad injury. I started to get a lot of dermatological problems like skin issues. I had a really bad scalp one where chunks of scalp were falling off, and that kind of put me off grappling and training for a while,
Mm.
the injury and the skin issues. So I spent a year and a half just training. I'd do calisthenics and I would just replay Bloodborne again and again and again, trying to do like challenge runs. And what I'd end up doing is say I'm playing Bloodborne, if I die or I reach the lantern, as it's loading, I would just do a handstand or some pistol squats, some kind of tricky body weight stuff, just in the loading screens. That was my training for about a year and a half. And then I
Brilliant.
came back to my full pro MMA debut. I watched John Wick 2.
Mm.
Thought, you know what, I'm going to start grappling again because he does all kinds of gi moves, like arm bars and sweeps and that. I think, yeah, I'll do some of that. And then within 4 months, I've stepped back into Fight Pro. I was nervous as hell because I hadn't really gone back training that long, but it worked out well.
Brilliant. What inspiration, John Wick and Bloodborne. Um, so yeah, we sort of just like touched over the UFC and who you might fight early on. But the guys, the sort of the new breed of lightweights, this next generation that, say you go into the UFC, you get one with maybe even two, you'll be part of that sort of that next surging wave. How do you think you sort of stack up to the guys like say Terence McKinney, Ignacio Bahamondes, some of the guys who are established and making their way up these next prospects? How do you think you compare to them? I mean, Paddy the Baddy as well, even he's basically part of that.
See, the most I'm clued up with is that kind of mid level of the division.
Yeah.
Well, not mid, like it's upper level, like the Gamrots and Sarukians. I think
Okay.
that's actually the best part of the division, really,
Yeah.
because you've almost got Poirier is off doing fun fights and doing his own thing now, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Chandler.
Gaethje
You
as well.
question will Oliveira bounce back? And I think the real highest level in the division is that kind of top 10 to top five. Gamrot, Sarukian, Dariush. I think Gregor Gillespie is really good as well, but I don't know when the last
Uh,
time he fought.
yeah, long time
I,
ago.
I, I don't know what the crack is there. I think the European scene is really underrated at lightweight, especially at featherweight. I think the Cage Warriors featherweight division is better than most of the UFC featherweight division until we start getting to the top tens.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, UK European MMA just in general right now is at an all-time high, and we've seen that with the back-to-back UK London cards from the UFC. Yeah, so what does it feel like to be sort of part of this surging wave of UK MMA that's I guess like forefronted by guys like Leon Edwards, Arnold Allen, and you're sort of the next guy coming in potentially.
It's really good, especially considering even when I started. So I started MMA when I was 15, which is like 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
It was always like, oh, the UK guys can't wrestle. But that's completely changed now.
Mm.
Leon Edwards was taking Usman down. When I thought Driscoll was a Division One wrestler, he didn't get near on any takedown attempt. It's completely kind of gone on its head now. And in terms of representing the UK, it's hard to think outside of Middlesbrough. I always think that I'm a Middlesbrough guy. Like when I got back to the gym after winning the belt, our gym's just a small gym down a kind of shady looking alley. You got a it's not an inviting gym entrance. You get into the gym, it's got everything you need, but a lot of it's held together by tape. I was just looking around the gym and thought, Yeah, we beat AKA. We beat AKA. More than the pleasure of winning the belt. That was the bigger thing in my mind. But yeah,
Brilliant.
UK MMA is exploding. I think there's so many good strikers in the UK as well. We've always had that striking base. Just seems to be the harder hitters. You know.
Who else in your gym? Obviously yourself and Harry, but who else in your gym are people worth keeping an eye out on?
So in terms of we're the only professionals really fighting out
Yeah.
our gym, but there's a bunch of really good amateurs. You know, there's Leon Arms, who's like he's like a brother to me and Harry now.
Hmm.
We're always around. We're always going on fight trips together. Zanyar Cameron was also really good. Just people who are picking up skills and are 100 times better now at their level of amateur than me and Harry were. It's a bit frightening. Also, the boss's son, Abdul Muhammad's son, Reese Muhammad. You know, he's just done a proper good level because, as you could imagine, if you're the son of Abdul Muhammad, who was like Cage Rage champion, Cage
Hmm.
Warriors champion, and you've been training with him every day from such a young age, he's a really difficult round. Even though he's only like 16, 17, and it proper pushes me through my paces.
Brilliant. Yeah, I know. I always like to ask fighters who else in the gym is on the next come up. So then I note them down. I've got this list of just people who like, people coming up from next gen, from yourself, your own gym. It's just and it's brilliant to see them sort of like develop into this next generation of talent. One thing I did sort of want to ask, relates to UK MMA. What did you make of Paddy the Baddy's recent fight, which is really it's got a lot of press and the words like controversial and even robbery being thrown around. What was your thoughts on that one?
So I haven't rewatched it, but I remember at the time I thought Paddy won round 2 and 3
Mm,
because I think he was outstruck in the first round. Jared was just doing like good simple combination jab, cross to the body and closing the door with a left hook. Was having good success with that. I think Paddy just had that slight edge in numbers, slight edge in how big the shots were in round 2. And then in round 3, people were going on about Jared Gordon's control time, but he didn't really do anything with it, which, in 2006 scoring
mm,
would have been different. But in terms of like effectual shots, Jared Gordon only really need the legs. And there was that moment where he got a takedown and Paddy's head kind of went into the canvas a bit because Paddy was holding onto a Kimura. In terms of
yeah,
effective shots and damage through the round, I think that was only really it. Paddy was landing better elbows and knees and then got better control when he finally got his
yeah,
takedown at the end of the round. I, I think people are just, because Paddy's that popular, are screaming robbery more than if it was just, say, I don't know, an undercard fight.
hmm
I think people like to make more of the controversy of it. I thought round 2 and 3 were Paddy's. I'd have to watch it again.
hmm
But then I've got like 150 Japanese kickboxing fights I've got to watch.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's very fair, especially like round 3. I think the significant strikes were 4-6 in Paddy's favor, so it's also so close that I think that's where like it's hard to call it a robbery. Um, you've made it very clear you're a big fan of Japanese kickboxing. Are you a fan of like, because we speak to guys sometimes. I was speaking to Oban Elliott a while ago, and he was just like, "Yeah, I don't really care about fighting unless it's my fights." And you got guys, mainstream guys like Derek Lewis, who just don't care about MMA, apart from literally when they're fighting. Are you a fan of MMA in general, or is it just this sort of niche Japanese kickboxing? What's your interest in the sport?
See, I do like MMA. I think if you're just going out to watch a random fight, you probably, if you go into the lighter weight divisions of Rise kickboxing or K1 kickboxing, you're probably more likely to get a good fight than if you just randomly pick an MMA fight.
Hmm.
Because I tend to watch the big cards, or I like to watch people that I've never heard of. Even in that MMA, just loading up a random fight on Fight Pass, I kind of like the process of there's two people you've never heard of, and you kind of pick up that feel for their style within, a round or two of watching them. And there's also that because I don't know their games, anything could happen, and it's a bit more interesting. I think
Yeah,
it's a good test as if you actually like the sport you're into. A lot of people say they're a massive fan of, I don't know, football or whatever, but they'd never watch a game between two teams they've never ever heard of. And I think that's important, is just to watch fights, watch whatever, with two people you've never heard of. Because then you've got no prior prejudices or attachments or expectations. You just kind of see the techniques in a more pure way, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah,
But yeah,
definitely.
I tend to watch a lot more kickboxing than I do full MMA.
Got you. Interesting. Yeah, it's not an answer I've had before, but it's yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Um, okay, yeah, we'll start to wrap things up, but I've got two things to end. First, what is an ideal 2023 looking like for yourself?
UFC and 3 to 4 finishes. I just want to be active. That would be ideal.
Brilliant. And then yeah, so I spoke about this very briefly off camera. We've got some mutual friends from back way in high school. I asked for any stories that might be funny to bring up. First of all, raw sweet potato, something you just sit in class and eat. Is that is that still a thing?
Oh yeah, I was mad for I was full on vegan for a bit,
Right.
and I used to have all mad ideas. I would just eat raw vegetables going around, raw sweet potatoes, raw bell peppers. I was just kind of one of them weirdos at school.
Bell peppers are good, to be fair. I understand that. It's a sweet potato. um, Second one, when you're in like sort of like year 8, would you go up to year 11s, ask them to punch you in the abs just to make yourself tougher?
Yeah, yeah, that was something, because I watched karate videos and thought, yeah, body conditioning. I had a funny one with one of my mates in our same year where I was watching Anderson Silva clips of his head movement, the Forrest Griffin fight. And I thought, I've got to practice that. And I got to my mate, just throw some punches at my head and I'm gonna dodge them. He literally just jabs me in the nose and I don't move at all. And then my nose is my nose is running with blood. And I thought, oh, that didn't go well, did it?
Not quite Anderson Silva yet. Um, Brilliant. Thank you, mate, for your time. I really appreciate it. If there are any sponsors, shout outs, or that, and if you want to let people know where to find you on social media, the floor is yours.
So my social media is just George Hardwick MMA on Instagram, George Hardwick MMA on TikTok, James Middlesbrough Fight Academy, Newcastle Fight Centre, Unit 29 Fitness in Washington. In terms of sponsors, JMac, Rev Gear, Bespoke Financial, Waste Clearance Services Middlesbrough, Beatniks, Canopy. Couldn't do it without them.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, mate. And yeah, let's hopefully get that UFC contract.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.